We do know the Falcons will be in the quarterback market this offseason, but we don't know if they're going to be in the market for a new head coach. Arthur Smith is coaching the final game in the 2023 season. It might be the final game of his Falcons career. I'm not quite sure. I think nobody quite knows. If you ask five different people, you'll get five different answers. It seems like nobody has a real pulse on the actual gravity of this week and if it means anything for Arthur Smith's job security. With that being said, let's just assume the Falcons are in the market for a head coach. This hiring pool is very intriguing. You've got the young guns, you've got the Ben Johnsons, you've got all the Joe Brady's, the offensive masterminds, Mike McDonald. He's the Ravens defensive coordinator. Lots of hype about him. But then there's some wild cards. Jim Harbaugh. It feels like somebody's going to throw a bag at him, and he might be fed up with the whole NCAA. You know, it is annoying. It feels like you're working with one hand tied behind your back with that clown of an administration in the NCAA. But another name, very interesting, Bill Belichick. Josina Anderson actually reported that a couple of NFC South teams are potentially interested in what I would consider the greatest coach of all time, Chase.
Yeah, and I know you wrote about this and you kind of said, oh, well, there's not an opening quite yet, so it's probably the Panthers, and that would make sense for David Tepper. He seems like the kind of guy who would love a flashy hire like that, but he also might prefer someone like Ben Johnson, and they did say a couple, so when you start thinking about a couple, you're Tampa Bay, New Orleans. Well, let's take New Orleans out of it because there's no way Bill Belichick is going to want to go and coach New Orleans. They're in cap hell. They can't make any moves. Derek Carr is not a great quarterback. He's not going to New Orleans. Now, maybe they'd be interested if that's really the only report. I don't think there's even a chance he would even consider New Orleans. But an interesting place is a place like Atlanta. Maybe he doesn't consider Atlanta because of the quarterback situation. He just came from a place where he was in quarterback hell. Does he really want to try to do that? And we also know that he wants full control, full autonomy of the roster. And I don't want Bill Belichick selecting the next quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. No offense to Bill. That's just not really what I want. So as long as he doesn't try to select the next quarterback, I would love to have Bill. He's the greatest coach of all time. Anyone who says they wouldn't is foolish. I think the interesting aspect when just, trying to predict which one of these NFC South teams is the relationship to like Robert Kraft and Arthur Blank. Like they're two old heads in this business. I know there was some like pissed off about the 28-3 thing, but they do, I think, have a pretty good relationship. I do think, from afar, Arthur Blank has really so much, and everyone has so much respect, but I really think I could see Arthur Blank really being like, oh, I want Bill Belichick to be my head coach of the team. There's been several times where Arthur Blank has fell in love with the candidate, and it's really been his decision. Jim Mora comes to mind and stuff like that. I think, from afar, I could see him having a lot of interest in this.
I want to double back on some of the things that you pointed out. I think that it's an absolute no-go regardless of where he goes. Bill Belichick will not have personnel decision-making power wherever he goes. You just look at his track record. They haven't given a second contract to a first-round pick in like more than 6 years or something like that. That's absolutely unacceptable. And for as great as he is in the X's and O's, it seems the game may have passed him by on the other side of things. And that's not to say that he doesn't have an input, but I think wherever he goes, he will not have the final say-so decision. Who are we picking this guy? So if that's the case with Atlanta, I'd love him. And if you don't like it because of the Patriots' shortcomings in recent years and the post-Tom Brady era, you're foolish. Like Chase said, I'd like to say some harsher words, but Fox might get a little mad at me. You're foolish because he's the greatest coach of all time. I understand Tom Brady had a lot to do with it, but name one great coach that didn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback. You absolutely can't. It takes two to tango. Just like I've been saying and defending Arthur Smith he's coaching with bums. He needs a good quarterback. And listen, I'm not defending Arthur Smith. He's done plenty wrong. And if Arthur Blank moves off of him, I'd have no problem with it. In fact, I would support it in some cases. But the fact of the matter is whoever is coaching this team needs a quarterback, Chase. That's the if and be. It's everything. We need a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you can complain about what's happened at the quarterback position in New England of recent years, which is the reason for the dumpster fire. But what you can't argue about is that defense. And that defense every single year is leading the league in turnovers, and it's leading the league and just wreaking havoc and just being hell to face. Like, there's not, like, you don't look at the New England defense, and this has been the way for most of this entire tenure, and be like, oh, there's a bunch of just like all pro players on that team. Like, all of them, like, it's never been like some of the great Steelers team, it feels like. But every single year, they're a top 5 defensive units. Like, I couldn't even name 5 players on the Patriots defense right now, and they go out there and terrorize opposing quarterbacks.
I mean, Matthew Judon's a top 5 player. And I do think what's so great about Bill Belichick from a defensive side of the ball is he turns these 3rd, 4th, 5th undrafted free agents into guys who go on to sign, big free agent contracts. So that's got to be interesting. And I think that if you get the right guy in the building to handle the offense, I mean, that's very intriguing for the Falcons. It has to be.
I think a lot of it just has to do with how much he wants to dabble in personnel stuff, how much he wants to dabble, like, because he's going to hire the offensive coordinator. I mean, what if he's like, yeah, I want Josh back? Like, you're kind of like, yeah, I
wouldn't mind that. Mac Jones had his best success.
I agree. I mean, Josh McDaniels has been a fantastic offensive coordinator. You can't. But
he's a terrible head coach, but that's not what we're hiring him for.
It's just bringing Josh McDaniels into the building is always just the personality and stuff like that. Like, if you're Arthur Blank, as much as you respect Bill Belichick, you probably think the opposite of Josh McDaniels.
It's probably fair. And if you do hire Belichick, I think to give that man personnel decision-making power would be one of the dumbest things Arthur Blank has ever done, and he's done some dumb things. I mean, that is absolutely unacceptable if that's the case.
I agree, but desperation makes people do stupid things. And to say the Falcons are in a desperate spot after potentially probably missing the playoffs for 6 straight season, and Arthur Blank turning 81, 82 years old next year. I mean, this guy wants to win so desperately. He might be like, if that's what makes you come, I'll do it. That wraps up our show for this evening. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back with you on Monday.